Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Karate Kicks. We're in the dojo. We're going to hear some more stories about karate. And we're going to hear from Master Ree. We're going to hear from Ed Parker. And we're going to hear from Bill Superfoot Wallace. And we're also going to hear from a very special guest. But we're going to hear all that as soon as we get back from entering the dojo through the crucible of a warrior. This is the song that tells the story of how Elvis earned his first black belt.
Feel a flame, hammer in hand, carved out his name. 16 and airborne boots in the dirt, jumping through walls, unbaptized and hurt. Karate in Japan, fists like steel, champion of honor, deadly and real. Sensei, warriors, no room for doubt. You wear the G or you train and come back. Your eyes a crucible, baby, not a showbiz belt. You bleed, you break, you feel a warrior's spell. Elvis hit the mat, but he rolls with the roll. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forged in Hank's domain. 30 throws, not dances, a fight. Bones to set, boards shattered on sight. Shudo elbow, fingertip flame. Every strike a prayer, every KO name. 6 weeks of fire, no cameras, no fame. Just sweat and bruises, no one played tame. Saw came in, fist like a stone, said put him down, break ribs if it's known. It's a crucible, baby, not a velvet crown. You fall, you crawl, but you don't stay down. Elvis hit the mat, but he rose with the roll. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forged in Hank's domain. All eyes watched the king that day. Would he crumble or would he stay? But Hank saw it, war in his eyes. Not a quitter, but a fighter who rise. From Hollywood lights to dojo dust, Elvis earned it, not on fame, but trust. No stunt, no script, just grit and bruise. Black belt truth, not a headline rule. It's a crucible, baby, not a stage or set. You earn every inch, every beat of sweat. Elvis hit the mat, but he rolls with a roar. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior. They burned through the fire, broke through the fear. The dojo of legends and kings stood clear. Crucible of a warrior. Elvis was here.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today, we're going to hear the echoes from Kong Ree and Wayne Carmen, who we haven't heard from in a few episodes. Now, we've been in the dojo for many episodes at this point, so if you've missed any of those, be sure to head back into the archive and check them out. But right now, we're going to go forward with a story from 1974, which we've seen is an important year in karate for Elvis. September 9th, 1974, that's when Elvis earns his 7th degree black belt in, I can't really pronounce the type of karate, but the type that Master Kong Ree teaches, Pasarau, And he had a lot of other important karate events that seemed to center on 1974. Hi, Gun. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. In 1974, Connery and Wayne Carman, they helped Elvis shoot footage for a documentary about karate tentatively titled The New Gladiator. Elvis was going to use this film to bring karate mainstream. He was hoping that through this film, everyone would come to know karate. Bruce Lee had really started into that, and at this exact moment in time in 1974, Bruce Lee's movies were becoming very famous, so karate was quickly moving into the mainstream consciousness. Elvis wanted to put his brand on it. And what Wayne Carman says is Elvis had sketched out a handwritten script of how he wanted the documentary to go. So basically, Elvis had plotted what he wanted this documentary to show. He hadn't written it per se, but he had outlined it. And Wayne Carman also says Elvis estimated the film would gross $9 million within the first month after its release. Of course, those were astronomical figures for then, but the star's drawing power might have pulled it off. That is probably a massive amount of faith on Wayne Carman's part in Elvis. And it's also a massive amount of faith on Elvis's part in Elvis. $9 million at that point in time would have been an astronomical figure, just as Wayne says, for a movie to gross, any movie. An Elvis movie, the ones he was doing in the 60s, they cost roughly $2 million to make. And they would gross roughly $4 million. Basically doubling the money. I don't know if there were any that had approached $9 million. I'd have to go back and look at that. But for the kind of movies that Elvis had normally made. Now, the other piece of the puzzle here is that if you've ever seen any of the clips that Wayne Carman, he ended up owning the film footage. And it's out there on the internet, on YouTube. And if you go below this video into the video description, you can find a link. And it'll take you to my post from today, from which you can click on that video and you can watch that clip. There's about a 5-minute clip that I've linked to. And it's a beautiful clip because it shows a story that we've heard Master Ree talk about. And that story is, and this is directly from Master Ree, he says, Elvis pretended to demonstrate a defense against a gun technique from more than 5 feet away. He then dropped to his knees, explaining that the only defense from that distance is to pray. This was very entertaining. Myself, the students, and all spectators laughed and clapped. Elvis is talking about, or Connery is talking about, the first time that Elvis ever came to Connery's dojo. Now the film clip is actually at the Tennessee Karate Institute, which is not Connery's dojo. Elvis invested in and basically bought his own dojo, which was this Tennessee Karate Institute. and he put Red in charge of it. So technically Red, I don't know if he owned it or if he just ran it, but the money that funded it had come from Elvis. And it was at this Tennessee Karate Institute where they took the film. So when you see that portion of the film, that's not the dojo that you could go to visit today. That is the Spa Guys Tiger Man Dojo. Tiger Man Dojo Karate and Museum, I think is what it's called. This is in another portion of Memphis. It's a little bit further away from Elvis's house. And it's on the second floor of this, I think it's like a strip mall complex. Now, the footage itself, you're going to hear a man, and he's going to narrate it. That is Wayne Carman, who we know as Mr. Lion. And Gun Brett asked, can we just call it Korean karate? Yeah, I think we probably can. That makes it a lot easier, right? But Korean karate, that's a good name for it, as we talk about it through these episodes. But if you see that clip, you can hear the voice of Mr. Lion, and that's the man that turned down a lion pendant, giant gold lion pendant with ruby eyes from Elvis, but did receive a TCB necklace that he was not able to refuse because Elvis would not allow him to refuse it. He ended up with the footage, and he and his wife owned it as of 1998. I don't really know what's happened with the ownership of the footage since then, but there was a DVD put out at one point that had some of it on it, or all that existed, I believe. Unfortunately, when you watch the footage, that's where you kind of realize that other piece of the puzzle, the production value, it's not there. If you're going to bring in $9 million, you're not going to bring it in from the clips that we see. Or even from the narration that we hear. Although it is wonderful that we are able to hear Wayne Carman's voice and his thoughts. But it's more like someone's taking a home movie than it is a true documentary production. Now, I've got a great picture of Elvis practicing karate with Red. You can only see the back of Red's head, but you know it's him because of the red hair. And Elvis is in mid-kick. He's getting ready to lash out with his foot. Based on what they're wearing and the look of everything, I don't know where this is taken at. I kind of feel like it might have been in Germany. Like perhaps this is the house that he was renting in Germany. But the paneling and some of the furniture has a 60s feel and not a 50s feel. So I just don't know where this is that they're practicing. But if it is 60s, it's got to be early 60s, and he must have just been back from the army. Now there's another fella in the background. He's sitting on a couch. I think that's Charlie Hodge, but I can't really tell. Do you think it's Charlie Hodge? Let me know in the comments or the chat. And there's someone sitting over on the right in what is either a love seat or a chair. And I have absolutely no idea who that is. So if you know who that is, let me know. The Charlie figure, the one that I think is Charlie, it's just the smile that he has is what's really making me think that it's Charlie. But I thought this was a really interesting picture you'd like to see. Here we see Elvis, and he's dressed in a G. Elvis is in a karate G that's white with a EP on the back in what looks like Oriental lettering. Or it's obviously English lettering that's stylized to look somewhat Oriental. He's got red and black stripes, although the color is not good in this picture, on one of his sleeves that goes around his sleeve. And he's got red satin on his collar and his belt. He's wearing, it looks like white leather boots. So that's a little unusual in the dojo to have your boots on. I believe this is, well, I don't know. I don't know when this is from. But there's a man standing next to him, and he's wearing a G that looks like an American flag, or it's stylized after an American flag. It has blue stripes with white stars in them, and there's some red accents. So it's red, white, and blue. He's got a black belt. That is Bill Superfoot Wallace. And Gun Ask Red training with Elvis with a gun. That is in the clip that you can access from the link below. You'll see Red holding that gun and Elvis doing exactly what Master Reese said, dropping and praying. But he also does a whole lot of other stuff. It's a great clip. But it's fun to watch that little particular bit that Elvis does. But this is Bill Superfoot Wallace, and he was a major star eventually in the world of karate. He worked for Master Ree when Elvis first met Master Ree, and he worked there in that dojo. And what he says is, one evening when I was working out at Master Ree's dojo, in walked Elvis and Priscilla Presley. Kong Ree stopped the class and asked everybody to sit down, and then introduced me to Elvis Presley. He said he'd seen me win the U.S. championships in Dallas, where I knocked out Skipper Mullins, and he complimented me on my kicking. We talked for about 10 minutes, and I thought, wow, that was fun. Thank you very much. Elvis Presley just dropped by to say hello and didn't work out or demonstrate anything. It wound up being the easiest job interview that I ever had. So Elvis ended up offering a job to Bill Superfoot Wallace to provide personal security for Elvis to be a bodyguard. So Bill joined the team. Dave Hebler was on that team. Ed Parker sometimes came in and worked on that team. Red's working security for Elvis, Sonny West, and Bill Superfoot Wallace. Bill says, not long after that first meeting, Elvis asked me to come work for him. He was a wonderful person, a nice guy. It was fun working out with him, too, but you couldn't hit him too hard. You couldn't punch Elvis in the face. but it was fun beating up his Memphis Mafia. He was very good at martial arts. He worked out very hard. I can't think of a better person to publicize martial arts. And Gunn says they look like they are dancing, so you must be watching the video as well. And yes, they do. And of course, it's a demonstration, so it is going to look a little bit like dancing. They've obviously practiced the moves. Hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. But Bill Superfoot Wallace, he's told us it's fun to work out with Elvis. You can't punch him in the face. You know, there's some rules. It's not as open as it is with other fighters when you spar. There are, responsibilities that Elvis has in the outside world, and you have to bear them in mind so that we can continue to have this fun. But you can hit his Memphis Mafia like any way you want once they get in the sparring ring. And so when they get in, they're fair game. And Bill Superfoot Wallace, he doesn't mind beating up on them. And Bill Superfoot Wallace says, when I became world champion in 1974, Elvis gave me a motorcycle. We could see Elvis and Bill on screen, and they're holding a trophy. And I don't know if this is Bill's world championship trophy, but it can stand in for it today as we look at Elvis and Bill. I don't know the true story behind this particular picture or what this award is, but I kind of think it is Bill's World Championship Award. And that's how good the people that Elvis is sparring with, who he's training with, who he's learning from, and who he employs to protect him, they're world champions. Bill is a world champion in karate in 1974. That important year in karate for Elvis. And in 1975, because Elvis gives the people around him gifts. He loves to give people gifts, those that he loves and that are near him. And he obviously is very fond of Bill Wallace. He gives Bill a station wagon. And Bill says, I kept it for a year, then I traded it in. I didn't know he was going to die the next year. I'm not sure if Bill's telling us he would have kept it longer, maybe forever, to remember Elvis. But at the time, it was just another car. It had been gifted by Elvis, so it was special, but in the long run, it was a daily driver that he traded in for another car after a year. And that was probably the smart financial thing to do, because after a year, the car has lost so much value as a car that if you're going to drive a new car every year, or if you're going to drive a new car regularly, most people who do that, they're trading every single year. My grandpa used to do that all the time. So a car is just something that you kept for a year and then you got a new one. Or you kept it forever. It was one of those two things back then. But Bill Superfoot Wallace says, the best part for me was beating up all of Elvis Presley's people. I just relegated them to pulp. I sparred with Red West, Sonny West, Jerry Schilling, and others. They worked out with us, but they only trained because Elvis Presley did. Red West made black belt under Ed Parker, so he was more serious. It was fun kicking Red West. So when Bill says that he landed punches on the Memphis Mafia, he didn't name them. He names all these guys. And so they did spar with him, with the world champion. Probably not just in the dojo, because of course he's working for Elvis. So he would have been up at Graceland, and he would have been around when they're around. And they were kind of roughhouse guys. So there must have been times they got into little sparring matches, and I'm sure Bill showed him a thing or two. And Gunn says, wasn't Ree good at kicking too? Small, fast, and good at kicking? He was extremely good at kicking. So that might have been like a larger piece of that Korean karate. Maybe they did more kicks. There's a piece of that video where it says Elvis concentrated on hands because you could do a lot more movements with the hands. There were a lot more ways to strike with the hands. But I think what that translates to is you have to be faster with the feet because there's fewer feet techniques. But I think Ed Parker was also a person who gravitated towards the hands and upper body strength. Because when you watch him, he doesn't throw a lot of kicks. He does a lot of punches and grabbing. And if you want to see Ed do any of that stuff, you can see some of it in his movie. To Kill the Golden Goose, or in the part that he's in 7, and I have also linked those below this video in the description so that you can check those out for yourself as well. Now, there's somebody else, and this is our surprise guest star for this episode. Somebody else who's connected to the Elvis karate story. And he's got, I think, a surprising story to tell. I think one that most people, most Elvis fans have not heard. It's not completely unknown. I just don't think it's well known. And this person is Chuck Norris. You can see Chuck on screen from about 1970, which is when I think this story is about from. Chuck doesn't tell us exactly. I think it's sometime from around 1970-ish. So this is about what Chuck would have looked like. You can see he's wearing a white shirt. He's got a gold chain on with a gold pendant. Nothing as extravagant as something that Elvis would wear. It is a fairly large pendant, but the chain itself is very slender. And Chuck's got his trademark blonde hair. And Chuck says, while they were still married, Priscilla called me to say she wanted to study karate with me. We had been introduced by Ed Parker at a tournament. I asked Priscilla why she didn't study with Ed, to which she replied, Ed can't teach me because he is Elvis's private trainer, as well as his personal bodyguard. So I agreed, and taught her at my Sherman Oaks martial arts studio. Priscilla Presley took karate lessons directly from Chuck Norris. That's pretty cool, right? Directly from Chuck Norris. And Chuck says, although most students welcomed face protection, Priscilla scorned it. I remember her responding as she rejected the offer to wear it. Priscilla said, "I won't have one of these on the streets." Once, Priscilla even insisted on going out in the alley behind the studio to work out with the high-heeled shoes because she said that's what she usually wore. Chuck is telling us that Priscilla did not learn karate simply to learn karate, to be able to do these moves, to do tournament style stuff. Priscilla is interested in self-defense. She is concerned about being attacked. She wants to be sure that she's able to protect herself in a normal situation where she might be wearing the high-heel shoes that she likes to wear, that she may take a blow to the face because she's not going to have face protection in a surprise situation. She's got to be able to react to that. She sounds kind of tough. That's the way Chuck remembers it. And Chuck says, Priscilla invited Bob Wall, who was Chuck's karate studio partner. I think that means that Chuck split the bills at this studio with this guy who was named Bob Wall, who's probably another great karate guy. So Priscilla invited Bob Wall and Chuck and me, what Chuck says. Priscilla invited Bob Wall and me to Las Vegas to watch Elvis perform at the Hilton Hotel. We gladly accepted the invitation. This would be the first time I met Elvis in person. I'll never forget sitting in the front booth with Priscilla at that dinner show and being captivated by his charisma and showmanship. So Chuck, because he knew Priscilla, got invited to watch Elvis at the Hilton. Now, Chuck names it as the Hilton. He could be misremembering, and he may have went when it was the International. But we know for sure this is sometime from 1969 forward. And because it's the Hilton, I would date it even further forward. But sometime, I would think in the early 70s, because we know that Priscilla and Elvis have split not much longer into the 70s. And like everyone else in the world, Chuck is impressed with Elvis's show. And then Chuck says, afterwards, Elvis invited us up to his suite, where we talked until 4 in the morning. At first I thought, what are we going to talk about? I knew nothing about music, but I knew I could talk about martial arts all night long. And we did. I was impressed with his self-defense insight and devotion. Even after 2 shows earlier that evening, Elvis stayed up to the early morning hours shooting the breeze with us. That was a special night for all of us, which I'll never forget. So Elvis and Chuck, they spend several hours just sitting and talking about karate with each other. After Elvis has given this impressive show, he's probably got other people in the suite. But Elvis and Chuck get engrossed in a conversation about karate. And Chuck, who his whole life is devoted to karate, he's impressed with what Elvis knows about it. Chuck says Elvis was a real nice, down-to-earth guy who made you feel in a few hours like you had known him forever. I still enjoy his music and films. I wasn't always a big fan of his morality, but then I wasn't always a big fan of mine. So Chuck tells us that, which is what a lot of people tell us, that a few minutes, a few hours, a relatively short period of time with Elvis, and you walk away feeling like you're lifelong friends. And in some ways, you are. And often Elvis will give you a little gift or something to make you, to seal that memory. He didn't, or at least Chuck doesn't tell us that he did. So we don't know if he gave anything to Chuck. But Chuck remembers him later, and he sees that Elvis is a mortal man just like everybody else, and that he has moral failings just like everybody else in the world. And Chuck sees that he himself, Chuck, has moral failings. And so he and Elvis, they have things in common. They have fame. They have struggles. They have karate. And those are Chuck's memories of Elvis Presley, who he got to know because he knew Priscilla. On screen now, we can see a black belt certificate from Master Ree. And this is a very difficult to read. It wasn't a great image of this particular certificate. But this is for Elvis's 8th degree black belt. Now we know from previous episodes that he got his 7th degree black belt on September 9th, 1974. There is a massive amount of confusion about that certificate and this certificate. And if you go looking around online, almost every place on the internet will say that he received this certificate, the 8th degree certificate, on September 9th. But if you look at the certificate, you can see that it's dated September 18th, which is 9 days later. So somehow, some way, Elvis got his 7th degree black belt on September 9th, and then he received this 8th degree black belt from Connery. Same guy who gave him that 7th on September 9th, received this 9 days later. Now, I don't really know the story behind that 9 days, and apparently nobody else does either. Because that's why there's this confusion. A lot of people will therefore date the 7th degree black belt as 1973. It clearly says 74, so I assume they have some other way to date that, but they don't typically give a date other than 73. They don't put an actual date like September 9th. So I think they just don't know. And they know that this one was from 74, so they just backdated a year. I think what we're seeing is the truth, and that they're 9 days apart, but that I don't know why they're 9 days apart. We also know that Connery gave an interview that I've linked to, where he says that he could only put somebody into the 8th if he was the 8th, and that he was only the 7th. And even during the interview, he was saying he was only the 7th. So how these details worked out, I don't know. Perhaps the black belt group that we heard Wayne Carman talk about, the circle of black belts that Connery would bring together, perhaps they voted this to him. That's not, Ree doesn't tell us that story, and Carman doesn't tell us that story either. So I think in their own minds, because these two certificates were so close together, that perhaps over the years, by the time they wrote these memories or spoke about them in interviews, they'd merged together to form one event. I don't know. And Gunn says that she never knew that Chuck Norris knew Elvis. Again, I think it's a rarely known fact. It's out there. You can find it, like I have, with this interview, but I don't think it's just kind of flown under the radar, and most people don't know about it. So it's kind of a fun thing to get out there. Hi, Linda Jewell. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. So there is still some mystery for us that's connected to this black belt certificate. And my hope is that one day we'll be able to take a close look at 1974. Not just the karate stuff, but, you know, everything that's going on in Elvis's life. And maybe we'll be able to make more sense out of this 9-day period. Or maybe one was misstated. I don't know. We saw this 9th degree black belt certificate yesterday. This is the one that Ed Parker gave to Elvis on January 8th, 1976. So this would have been his 41st birthday. Elvis is 41. And I love this certificate because Leilani, Ed's wife, has signed the certificate. It's also got Dave Hepler's signature on here. And Ed's signature's on here 3 times. Leilani's twice. But the other reason that I'm bringing this up is that it comes with a letter of authenticity, because of course this is out there on the market, on the auction market. Somebody owns it now. But at one time it was sold. And this letter says, the 9th degree Kenpo Karate certificate was given to me, Ginger Alden, by Elvis Presley at Graceland. It was the highest degree he received and was presented to him on his birthday. Elvis's passion for the art of karate led him to tell me that he didn't want to try for a 10th degree. He said there's no place for me to go after that. Ginger Alden. So I had to tell part of this story yesterday hurriedly because we were running out of time, and I think I may have put confusion out there. There are 10 degrees of black belts for Ed Parker's Kenpo Karate, the American Kenpo Karate. But Elvis stopped at 9. So his highest was 9th. He could have gotten a 10th, but according to Ginger, he stopped at 9. Now, what I also find very, very significant is that if this was truly his highest degree in Kenpo Karate, his greatest black belt, you know, he gave the certificate, I guess not the belt itself, but the certificate to Ginger Alden. This is something that would have truly only had value to Elvis, and it would have had an immense amount of value to Elvis. But he gave it to Ginger. And now I want to return to Ed Parker as we close out our look at Elvis and karate specifically. There are still karate stories to be told, but I think those stories are going to fit into chronology better if we tell everything that's happening in Elvis's life at that period. But we now know the major players and who they were and what kind of people that they were. And Ralph Castro says, when I last talked to Ed Parker, he told me about his school burning down. So Ed Parker had multiple schools. I don't know which one or if he was down to one, but or what period of time Ralph Castro is referring to. But at some point, one of Ed's schools burned down. You know, that's not good, no matter how you look at it or when it was. It must have been devastating for Ed. Hopefully he recovered financially from it, but I think what Ralph is maybe telling us is that it was a financial burden. And Linda Jewell is asking, is this cape belt from the Aloha concert? Yes, it is. Elvis gave Ed one of the capes, there were two, from the Aloha concert in Hawaii, 1973. I don't know when he gave them to Ed. Ed tells a story about a concert where he gave them, but he doesn't date it. But he also, after the concert, gave Ed this belt, which of course matches the cape. And Ed framed them and put them up in his house. This is the entryway to his house. So the door that Ed is standing by goes further into the house. I believe the entryway is on the other side that we can't see. And something fancy's going on because Ed is in a tux in this picture. But Ed did have some parties and stuff and invited a lot of people. And he would bring the neighborhood kids in and teach, I believe, Mormon religion and karate. So this is actually Ed's house in Pasadena, California. So Gunn's saying that she had read number 7 was 1973 and number 8 was 1974 for the belts. Well, we actually saw number 7. And we looked at it and it said 1974. Now I don't have it to pull up for this episode, but I am highly considering doing a timeline episode where I show all of the certificates I have found, at least so far, and we put them into a timeline as correct as I can, and maybe I'll throw that up as a video, and then you'll be able to see that certificate again. But it said 74, so unless it was misdated. Plus, there's this date of September 9th that everybody agrees on. And that number 8 was September 18th. But the date on the number 7 is September 9th. So my belief is they're just so close in time together that there's just a massive amount of confusion around them. And Linda's saying that should be under lock and key and that Graceland doesn't have it. I truly don't know where the cape and belt are right now. And Colleen's saying it was a historical concert because it was the first to go over by satellite. That is true. All the way around the world, although it didn't play in the United States till later. So that was a little bit odd, but everybody else in the world did get to see it, although almost everybody saw it in black and white. So most people, because the color television was popular and well known in America at the time, they just think that it was sent around the world in color, which it was, but most places only had black and white technology to broadcast it. And those who had color technology, most people only had black and white televisions. But Ed Parker, he passed away at the age of 59. So he was relatively young, age 59, on Saturday, December 15th, 1990. From a heart attack he suffered upon arrival at the Honolulu International Airport. He died en route to Kaiser Hospital. So Ed did pass away in his beloved Hawaii, but from a heart attack while he was still in the airport. And Wally J., who knew Ed, he says, in a way, I'm glad Ed went fast and didn't have to suffer. I don't think he's the kind of man who would want that. He was so independent. He was a Kalahi boy, which that's the area in Hawaii where Ed grew up. And here's something that Ed said in a conversation once to Elvis. And it tells us how Ed and Elvis looked at mortality and eternity. And Ed says, Elvis, look at your own body. Look at the universe around you. They are infinitely more complex than the most sophisticated watch ever created by man. Can you believe that this precision, this artistry, all came about by accident? Elvis shook his head and said emphatically, no, Ed, there's a creator's hand behind it all. It's obvious. It's plain that a supreme intelligence put it together. So Ed and Elvis, they shared a belief in something larger than themselves. They both also believed in Jesus. Ed was a Mormon. Elvis was from the Assembly of God. But they shared this belief that there was more to the universe than just chance. And Ed said Elvis was a damn good black belt by any standards. He had a lot of guts, and pain didn't bother him. If he got hit while you were working out, he took it like a man. In fact, if you did hit him, he'd come right back after you. Elvis was tough and had a lot of courage. And that is really our goodbye to Ed Parker. And Colleen says that both Ed and Elvis were deep thinkers. And Linda is saying to Gunn that I was saying that Ginger sold and auctioned the certificate, not the belt itself. Yes, she auctioned the certificate. And there's discussion about the amazing feat of the global broadcast by satellite of the Aloha concert, which was a technical marvel for the time. a lot of that was due to the Colonel. Apparently, he thought up almost all of that. That somehow it hit him from knowing different pieces of technology that were available. And then he spearheaded it all the way through. And Elvis thought it was just an amazing idea and couldn't wait to do this. So it was... I've often wondered if the Colonel did this to challenge Elvis or if he just thought it was the greatest marketing scheme of all time. But it's another piece that really deserves a really deep dive look. And then Gunn is asking about Connery's certificate. I don't know where any of the images for his certificates come from. They're not from auction sites. They're like from fan sites that I've seen them on. So I don't know. But there's the auction history that I can actually access, or that any of us technically could access online, is it's really limited to 2012 and forward. You can find references to stuff that was sold prior to 2012, but the internet was difficult to put pictures up and stuff back then, so there's not a lot of that. Even if you can find like a copy of the site somewhere that the stuff was on, which I use this thing called the Wayback Machine a lot. It's on the Internet Archive. And you can put in a defunct URL, and then it'll see if it's ever saved it, an image of it, and then show you the image. So sometimes I can retrieve some lost information that way, but even then, I can only get back to references to things that went back to like 1999. But there was stuff being sold from 1977, and even before that, but a lot of stuff being sold from 1977 forward. And it's like all the stuff that made it to the Jimmy Velvet Museum. Most of it doesn't have any provenance, so you don't really know how it came and how it got there. And there's just massive quantities of this stuff. And if you go out and you... again, look at YouTube, you can find people that are touring you through their own private Elvis museums that they have set up to museum quality standards with the cases and the dust-free stuff that they need to keep everything clean and neat, and they've organized everything and they've labeled it just as if it was a museum, and it's like in their basement or as part of their house, but it takes up a lot of square footage. But it's not just like one person. There's like at least 10 of these that I've seen, and these are just the ones that are willing to put it onto YouTube to have somebody come and take a video of it. And these are the guys who are really taking care of stuff. But there must be a lot more stuff that's just buried in boxes and things out in people's houses. It's really unreal, the amount of stuff that's out there. And as each one surfaces now, they kind of make it onto the internet, and whatever provenance was with it kind of comes with it. So we're in a bit of a golden age for this information about Elvis. It's just up to us to put it all together now. And I have talked myself all the way through another hour. And so we're going to wrap up in a second with a song. Let me just get through the rest of the comments. And Colleen says that she wouldn't sell anything that Elvis gave to her. And Linda Jewell says, I'm sure it would be hard. Ginger had a gorgeous engagement ring. Ginger had a whole lot of stuff. And I've been showing bits and pieces of it in different videos. But it was a lot. And we're going to get through a lot more of it. And Linda says that she's not sure if she sold the engagement ring or not. I can't remember if she did either. I remember it came up for display, and so there are pictures of it available. But Colleen says she doesn't think she sold the ring. And she was in an interview and talking like she still had it. I'm thinking she showed the ring to prove she had the ring, but I can't remember that she sold it. And a Graceland tour guide has told Linda Jewell that a lot of gifts get donated back to Graceland. Yeah, I'm sure that I just don't believe that, but I know that would be a line that they would probably use. But if you had a special Elvis item, would it, I guess, I don't know. Maybe when Lisa was in charge. And Colleen says that the stone from Elvis's personal TCB ring is the stone that's in Ginger's engagement ring, which is absolutely true. It's a very special stone. It's a very special story. This was not something that, again, this isn't a piece of jewelry that Elvis went into a store and purchased, or he called and said, hey, bring me that thing you've got in the window or in your display case. Elvis had a custom made piece done, and he had it done overnight with a stone that was not available, so he had to have this one, and he was willing to sacrifice this one to show his love and commitment to Ginger. It's a very special stone, and someday we'll have to get into that. And the CZ in the real TCB ring, yeah. Because Elvis was going to get another diamond like that, but just didn't happen. And so I'm going to let you all go now. We're going to leave the dojo. It will be our last time in the dojo. We're going to start something new. And we're going to see what that is in the next episode. And until then, you all keep on taking care of business. I'm going to play this song that's about jewelry that Elvis gave to Ginger. And it's called Sealed in Gold.
In the hush of a Vegas night, he called a close, no stage, no line. Slipped a ring on both her hands, no crowd to cheer, no wedding band, just love, just prayer, just time grown old, a vow unspoken, sealed in gold. Two hearts caught in 24K, in peace, in quiet display. No diamonds loud, no eagles cry, just tenderness that doesn't lie. Worn near her skin, where stories hold a whisper of him, sealed in gold. My love, to give, but something whole, the myth, the memory, sealed in gold. No velvet throne, no final show, just gravel roads where true love goes. He gave her life, he gave her soul, and left behind a heart to hold. He loved my life. He wrote it in chains, a promise forged through joy and pain, not just to give something bold, the myth and memory. Sealed in gold, sealed in gold, sealed in gold.